My dear brothers and sisters of all colors, I want to salute you in regard to your marvelous support of my dear sister Tricia and I over this past year. But we are now at a fork in the road. We have got to shift. We've got to move now to Patreon to maintain our freedom from corporate influence and a whole host of other external influences. And we hope that you come with us and stay on this love train.
Yes, we do. We really need your help and support, and we're really excited about the future and what we're planning. So we want to just remind you that to access the full episodes going forward, please go to www.patreon.com/the tightrope pod and become a member of our Patreon community if you aren't already one. We have several subscription tiers to make the show accessible. It's affordable, and there's lots of opportunities for community building. But we really need your help. Our goal to keep our show going in a really smooth way and to know we can depend on the next week and the next week is about 3,000 members on Patreon. That's our goal for the year. If we can get that goal met as soon as possible, we can keep the tightrope alive and well and flourishing and keep you with us in conversation. So we look forward to your support. We hope you do what you can, spread the word, talk about the tightrope on your favorite platforms. And we just are grateful for all you've done to make this show a reality and to send us so much love. And we have to mostly thank Cornel for his wisdom and genius. And we just look forward to seeing y'all soon.
Hi, I'm Father Mike Pfleger from Chicago, and I'm on the tightrope.
We are witnessing America as a failed social experiment.
How do we tell this story in a way that builds the kind of emotional momentum that colorblind ideology built?
So many young brothers and sisters of the younger generation find themselves so far removed from the best of their past.
What are we going to make out of the nothing we've been given? How do you envision possibility?
Hey everyone, how's everyone doing? Thank you so much for joining us on the tightrope, where we engage in a love and justice infused conversation, and we try to toe the line and stay afloat on the tightrope on very tough issues. I'm Tricia Rose. I'm here with my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Cornel West, and we have a really special guest today, don't we, Dr. West?
Oh, now isn't that the truth? I don't really have words for this brother. He is the one and only, the inimitable prophetic figure who speaks the truth and seeks justice, not just in American Christendom, but in global Christianity. He's on the south side of Chicago. He has been there decade after decade after decade. I consider him the John Brown of the Black freedom struggle in the 20th and 21st century, but he's got that Christian twist to it in terms of not killing some of the innocent folk like John Brown did, but he's got the love of Black people that John Brown has. He has been my brother now for over 35 years. I've been blessed to preach in his church every February for 27 years, as has Harry Belafonte, as had a whole line of folk. But I'm talking about Brother Pfleger, Michael Pfleger, Pastor Pfleger. He's a priest in the Catholic tradition. Here I am, funky Holy Ghost Baptist, and he's Holy Ghost Catholic. But he is my brother as much as any brother I have ever had. What a blessing to have you, man.
Blessing to be with you, Doctor. You know, you are one of my heroes of life, and I thank God for your voice. And Dr. Rose, thank you for your two very important voices that we need right now in this country, in this time that we're going through, and going forward as we look forward to what's happening. I know we're going to have a new administration, but that doesn't mean we're going to have new changes if we don't push, press, and force. So I thank you for both of you. I thank for the invitation to be on Tightrope today. It's an honor to be with you.
I think that was Coretta Scott King, the great Coretta Scott King, who chose you twice to speak at the major events in Atlanta when she was head of the King Center. Now we've got Sister Bernice doing a wonderful job. But then the 50th anniversary for King's assassination, you were chosen as the keynote speaker. And that's, you know, that it doesn't get too much better than that. Because when you are that centered in the legacy of the one and only Martin Luther King Jr., and consistent and constant in that way, and then are recognized by other folk. I mean, it's like when Frederick Douglass was recognizing John Brown, when Harriet Tubman said John Brown was the greatest white man I have ever met in my life. So that the color line became, in fact, a launching pad rather than a wall of demarcation. And that's what I think is true for Brother Pfleger. But let's start at the beginning. Now, I can see your beloved father sitting in the wheelchair right there on the front row.
Yes, sir.
In St. Sabina. He's the only vanilla brother there. Everybody else is chocolate. He got thousands.
And let me make sure that we make clear that my father always told me, don't ever let me have to make a choice between listening to you or Dr. West. He said, you'll always be my son, but Dr. West will always be my preacher. So I know my place.
Well, let's start with your family. What has gone into the making of my dear brother Pfleger?
Well, you know, Doc, I think I probably didn't put most of it together until I was close to 30 years old. But I realized when I was growing up, I had a sister who was mentally challenged, who was 10 years older than me. And I watched, this is back, you know, I was born in 49. So I watched those first 10 years of my life, seeing her at that day called retarded, laughed at, talked about, made fun at all the time. And there was always this really anger inside of me because my sister was probably one of the most gentle and giving people I've ever met in my life. So I watched that growing up. And then in freshman year of high school, I had an opportunity to go and work that summer, actually for 2 summers, down at a Native American reservation in Oklahoma. And was totally ignorant of our Native American brothers and sisters and their history and their rich culture as well as their pain, and saw what they went through. I remember I was there 2 weeks. This is 1964, and that summer, and we went into town to get some ice cream, and the guy said, well, you can come in because you're white, but they can't come in because they're Indians. And I said, where do I live? This is America. So we spent 2 summers learning about that. Then came junior year of high school, and that August after that junior, right before I started senior year, when Dr. King was coming to Chicago. And that literally changed my life. I talked to my friends. We rode our bikes over to Marquette Park to see him. I did not know he had already been hit by a rock when he first entered the park at 67th and Kedzie. And then saw first of all this hatred and this racism and bigotry and turning over cars and starting cars on fire and all this that's going on. And I saw people that I knew there who went to my church, lived in my neighborhood, and I'd never seen this side of them. Then here comes Dr. King with this total control of peace and love, and yet demanding justice while he showed love and never responded to the hate, but kept saying, you know, we're brothers and sisters and we have to learn to live together. And that absolutely overwhelmed me. And I left that day saying there's something about this man. Either he is crazy or he has a power I want to know about. And I began to study. Of course, we didn't have internet and computers and all that at that time. So I started going to the library and reading everything Dr. King had ever written and learning about him, and realized his power was his faith. And his faith gave him his power in love and nonviolence. And then I moved to the west side of Chicago after senior high school, got involved with the Panthers. I was going picking up food for because I realized, sadly to say, on the west side of Chicago at that time, that the organization that was doing the most to serve people was not any of the churches, but it was the Black Panthers with the breakfast program, the tutoring program, the after school program. So I got involved with them and actually got a place at the church I was at when Fred Hampton needed a new place to meet. So Chairman Hampton, I got him the place to meet. I remember asking him, I said, well, I got you the place, Chairman. I said, can I come to the meetings? And he said, well, you know, Mike, we're the Black Panthers. And I said, I understand that. I said, but I just want to learn from you because I realized, and I've listened and been speeches and saw Liz give, I realized there was nobody who I learned more about organization from than Chairman Fred Hampton. And that became my training field. I was in seminary, but the seminary I was learning was on the street on the west side. And been here since 1975 at St. Sabina, and I try here to create a church that I think Dr. King spoke about, where we sought to build the beloved community and be a voice for the voiceless and be a voice to the city, to the state, to the country, and be uncompromised and realize that we had to be in love with truth and then proclaim truth to whoever and pay the cost to that and the sacrifice that comes with that.
Right. That's an amazing story. I just want to, that's so powerful. But I think this pay the price and to make the sacrifice and pay the price is a very important part of your story. A lot of people have moments that you could string together across time, but you've been consistent across time, making these sacrifices, telling the truth. What fortifies you? What gives you the strength to continue under a lot of duress and a lot of suffering and a lot of discouragement, I'm sure, right? People who think you shouldn't be doing what you're doing, the Catholic Church as well, and others. How do you withstand that? What keeps you going?
Well, I think number one, doctor is my faith. It is my morning consecration and my all day kind of running back to and calling on my faith is I don't see how anybody can continue to fight for justice consistently, effectively, particularly on the ground, without rooted in some faith. Gandhi had a faith, Muhammad had a faith, Malcolm had a faith, Dr. King had a faith. So you got to know there's something bigger than you because the forces are so great and so strong and so determined. So it's my faith. But I think the other thing is people, like Dr. West and Harry Belafonte and Jeremiah Wright and Louis Farrakhan and others who I see as people who have stood the ground and been consistent and paid the price. I think that to me is absolutely key. That I think a lot of people want to do a lot of good things, but when it gets bloody, and it's what costs your reputation or it costs your comfortability, they step back. And I think you've got to be willing to understand, like Ellen Bosick said, that perhaps God's going to ask all of us when we stand before him, where are your wounds? And if there's no wounds, there's nothing worth fighting for and worth dying for, then what do we do? So I think heroes and sheroes in my life and that I look to it for mentoring. And I think and then certainly it's faith. There's times when you just got to cry out to God and say, okay, I can't do this. You got to give me what I need.
I can see that banner right now in the church. The cost of discipleship.
Yes, sir. Are you willing?
Are you willing? That's it. The fundamental thing, fundamental motif. Let's talk about you, very much like myself, being a son of Martin Luther King Jr. in terms of his rich legacy. And at the same time, out of deep love, you reach out to Jeremiah Wright, in many ways a son of Malcolm X in the Christian tradition. Minister Louis Farrakhan, a son of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the Islamic tradition.
Mhm.
What goes into that kind of outreach and the major costs you have to pay in terms of even embracing our dear brothers, Jeremiah Wright or Minister Louis Farrakhan?
Well, I think, I've been very disappointed in the Christian church, Doc, for some time, in the fact that, it's been, I think can't really show his face back at the Million Man March when Christian preachers said, you can't go to that. It's a Muslim gathering. You can't go there and listen to Farrakhan. You're a Christian. And that this has been, I think, an excuse for ages to cut off people from other faiths and other faith traditions and other denominations even. And they became an excuse to not have to deal with what they were saying. And my thing has always been, at our church, we've had Jewish rabbis, we've had imams, we've had a Baha'i, we've had a number of different folks here. My thing is, at the end, at the core of all the holy books, the Quran, the Bible, or the Torah, there's this fundamental realities of care for the poor, of love and respect for one another, of speaking up for justice. And my thing has always been where we can connect on those core things, that we would ever come together on just those core issues. I'm not intimidated by a rabbi who speaks of Abraham, or a Mr. Farrakhan, or another imam who speaks about Muhammad. I'm not intimidated by it. I know who it is I love and believe and follow. But if we get together on those core issues, and we can, in the civil rights movement, you had different lanes in the highway. You had Stokely, you had Malcolm, you had King, you had Black Panthers Party. You had all these different lanes, but they had a target of where they were going. And why do we have to, argue and on the small stuff about what's your lane and what you believe? I remember one time when, and I know you do, when the reporter asked Dr. King and said, hey, Stokely Carmichael just said this about her, or Malcolm said this about you, and what do you have to say? And he said, they're my brothers. If we understand that brotherhood and sisterhood for justice, and we can take different lanes to get to the same place and respect each other. But unfortunately, it's very costly. I've paid a deep price for my relationship with Jeremiah. I mean, when the day that Barack Obama announced he was running for president and pulled Jeremiah off the podium to pray, I went to Barack that afternoon when he was here in Chicago at an event and said, how you start something is how you're going to finish. And if you start by compromising people who have nourished you and fed you and helped form you, then shame on you, and it makes me question how you'll be as a president. And when Farrakhan got put off the ban from Facebook some time ago, a year ago, and I invited him to come to respond to it here at St. Sabina's. Oh my God, I was condemned across the country by the Jewish community. I said that St. Sabina was a sanctuary of hate. And I received so much hate mail from rabbis around the world, and lost close to $500,000 in funding because they reached out to grants and to foundations and to city and state to stop me and pull back money as a result of having him here and speaking. So I think that one of the things that people who are going to seek and search and fight for truth today is they have to be willing to go through the wounds and the attack, because that's real. It's real in this society and in this culture. And if you're not willing to go through that, then you shouldn't get into battle. You shouldn't get in it, because you won't last. And that's why faith, I think, has to be the foundation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's fascinating to me how, whatever differences we could have with anybody, could be a Jeremiah Wright, or Ms. Louis Farrakhan, or other, when we say that our love is deeper than the differences, yes, we get in trouble. But when we go the other way, when you go right wing, when you give the address at Wheaton College, which is, as our brother Dwight McKee, our dear brother, towering figure in his own right, he calls that the Vatican of Christian Protestant evangelicalism. But you get invited to those deeply in its conservative place, you are applauded. you reaching out, your love is spilling over across the board. But when it spills over in that direction, it's affirmed. When it spills over,
yes,
and with Brother Wright and Brother Farrakhan, all of a sudden they figure that you become some embodiment of satanic forces. And so I have the same kind of thing coming at me all the time. And
right.
Wait a minute, yo.
It's a qualifying love that we proclaim out here. I love you if you are standing my side of the corner, but if you cross the corner to stand with somebody else, it's the same thing. Like right now, I mean, I've been under attack, for the last number of years because of the brothers that we reach out to that are demonized by the police and demonized by the city and by foundations, and we say we care about our children, but no, we can't help that one because he's selling drugs or he's done this or he's a shooter. No, what we need to do is put our arms around them and love them back into their purpose and their dreams. But we're not, we qualify who love is meant for and who it's not.
Right. So let me ask the two of you a question about this, though, because I think our tightrope community would appreciate further elucidation on this. So, you're both making a strong and compelling argument for reaching out across various boundaries to create space for conversation, dialogue, and maybe challenges. But are there any people who you would say you wouldn't reject from society, but that you would not reach out to yourself? Is there any, are there limits to this framework? I mean, someone could make an argument that, there could be some outer limits in some way that would basically be someone who you think is more focused on hate than love in some way. Would that be a fair context, or what would be your standards for creating a limitation if you would?
That's a beautiful question. No, go right ahead, my brother.
Well, I was just going to say, I would like to believe that I could sit down with the person who I dislike the most. Dr. King told his cabinet when they had it with Bobby Kennedy and the rest, that he's always going to be against us. So, he said, reach out to him and find his moral center. And try to bring him to where we're at. So I'd like to think that I would have or pray myself into meeting with anybody. Understanding, though, that not compromising, not glad-handing, and being to stand in my position and try to hope. Dr. King had his social action works of first education. That should change people's views. Then it should be negotiation, then purification, and onward to demonstration and to reconciliation. Well, I would love to believe that education would change people who are hateful, who are violent, and the supremacists and the rest of this country. But I'm lived long enough to know that it's not going to change them. That in fact they have compromised themselves to believe that the God I say I serve, that they serve the same God and believe the absolute opposite. But I would hope that I would have the willingness to sit with them and discuss with them and talk with them, but then walk away from and be able to say, I can't stand with this, I can't walk with this, and yet condemn it when I see it, both publicly and privately. That's my prayer. Pray for me.
Yes, I will.
Because I ain't there yet. I'm just trying to be there.
You all are braver than me. I have a list of things I'm not going to. So I don't have the courage nor the adequate fortification. I'm like, I always say to Cornel, I don't know how you're having this conversation and you're still breathing, But what would you do, Cornel? What's your standard?
Well, I understand people who have limits, and I can appreciate their consistency in that regard. But I think the distinctive calling of a Christian is to be able to find something in others to love, no matter who they are. They're made in the image of God. They have the capacity to be changed and transformed. And therefore, all you got to do is look long enough and deep enough. I think about the dialogues I had with some of the vicious neo-Nazi brothers and the Klan at Charlottesville. And we've talked before about, they listen to the Black music. So we started dialogue and say, hey, I'm into that music too. What is it about the music? We already got something in common, even though you came to kill me. So that it's this sense of loving enemy that is an element of the calling of the Christian that for me means there's really nobody who's beyond bounds. But it
Right.
doesn't make any sense. And you can't do it on your own. You have to be aided by a grace that has changed your life in such a way that you're willing to bear witness. And so it will never, ever be something that worldly wisdom will grasp in that sense. But part of it too is that a lot of the people who we're talking about have just been lied on. You know, when
Yes, sir.
Jeremiah Wright said, "Goddamn America," that's William James saying, "Goddamn America" for the vile actions in the Philippines. Everybody love William James. He says it in the Black context, he gets trashed. Ms. Louis Farrakhan,
Right.
the large numbers of Jewish brothers and sisters really believe he said Hitler's a great man, but he never said that. He said he's
Right.
wickedly great.
Right.
He's great
Right.
in wicked things. So they start lying on him so that he becomes easier to hate. Now, I've had, many wonderful dialogues and critiques. Ms. Louis Farrakhan, we prayed together, we
Right.
fight together, we love each other in that sense. So it's not as if we don't have disagreements, but we want to get it clear in terms of what happens when people are lying on other folk. We've had discussions about patriarchy. We've had discussions about homophobia and transphobia. Right. And so have you. I mean, of course, you get a chance to talk with both Jeremiah and Mr. Louis Farrakhan much more than I do. But first, we want to just get straight at what people say. And then we have the criticism. Then we have the wrestling. Then we have the serious dialogue that ought to take place. But as Christians, though, Tricia, it's absurd to try to love everybody. That's one reason why it's a beautiful thing.
And it reminds us we are always under construction.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, I think, partly I asked that question because I think, our time is limited on this earth. As far as I know, I know I got a clock ticking like most other humans, if not all.
That's true.
And I'm wondering, where do we spend our energy, right? Where do we spend our time? Do we valorize people who might be more problematic on any side, right? I'm not really at any side. And sometimes, one could make an argument that, both of you are so gifted and so influential and so important that, the question could be both in terms of the right wing, right? Olive branches, or at least, hand of peace exchanges, and on the left or on the non-right, I'm not sure what to call some of those positions, but you know what I mean, that maybe that time does actually help support. So that's why I really asked the question, because the intention, I think, is very specific in both of your cases. It's incredibly important because there's also an educational dimension. Not only do we want to correct the lies, but we want people to see the range of appropriate disagreement and how we can be in the same struggle and have strong disagreements about, as you said, Father Pfleger, what lane to be in. And so it's a tough thing, I think, to sort that out, but it's urgent because there's so much polarization and so much non-talking. And, just one footnote, Cornel, of course, Black music connected you to the neo-Nazis, of course. It's like, I'm like, America never ceases to amaze me. Like, y'all are actually bumping Black music and trying to kill Black folk at the same time. So just go live with that. Like, I can't even.
That is as American as apple pie right there.
I think something you were saying, Dr. Rhodes, is true. I think in time and spending your time and your energy, I hear that. And I think that our call has to be at the depth of our Christian faith is to never not try to speak truth and get to the moral center and get to the heart. But I also think there comes a point then that, and I've tried that with the NRA, and I got to the point of saying, okay, there's no sense meeting with you all anymore because you come after with the same thing and you have the same prerequisite of thinking. So then I really love the scripture that says, shake the dust off your heels and keep walking. And I think there is sometimes you say, well, I'm willing to talk with you. I'm willing to share with you. I'm willing to, because I believe in the power of God's word. And I think also I believe in the power of truth. Now they can accept or reject it, but I think they're also agreeing with you. Takes a time when you say, okay, this is not a worthwhile conversation. I remember speaking I was giving a talk out in the Southwest side, and a whole group of neo-Nazis came in and stood across the back room. They started shouting at me and trying to interrupt the talk. And I said to them, I said, you know, I'm willing to sit and talk with you afterwards, but I'm going to finish my talk. And they kept it up and kept it up. And so finally the police were called and the police ushered them out. And so I told them, I'll be glad to meet you outside afterwards. And I was willing to talk with them. But when I walked out, they came at me. It was about 25 of them coming at me to attack me. And I said, well, then I'm not going to talk to you. You know, they came out physically attacked me. So the police had to take me and get me in a car and get me away from there. So I think there's that fine line, but I think we always got to be willing to say, I'll have the conversation. And I think that's our Christian roots. Like I say, that reminds me too often, I'm not a good Christian, but I'm trying to be.
And we're reminded that, you know, there's things about us that make us unworthy of being loved. And if that's true, then when we refuse to love others because we think they're unworthy, well,
right,
there's a certain context in which we in that same category. You know what I mean? That's part of the Christian insight and wisdom, really. But in a way, Tricia's question really is multi-layered, because there's certain practical limits and there's certain religious limits. The religious limits ought to be open across the board, loving everybody. Practical limits is when you try over and over again. I mean, I think of the number of times that Minister Louis Farrakhan and myself, and at that time Russell Simmons and others, we were meeting with a lot of Jewish rabbis. And you know, they're not monolithic, they're not homogeneous. You know, some of them were very decent, some of them were lukewarm, and others were very, very unfair. But when you have a meeting and you have a fair exchange, and then right after the meeting, they go out and just start lying. Too many of them go out and start lying again. And you say, well, wait a minute, we just had a meeting. What? We just had some understanding. And you could feel the pressures coming at them from outside. And so in that context of practical limitations, you say, well, I'm wasting my time having meetings with some of these folks because they're just not honest. They're not trustworthy. They don't have integrity. Now, that wasn't true for all of them, but it was true for too many of them. You see. So what happens there is life is too short for those kind of meetings. You know, you want to meet with the folk who are going to really be truth tellers and have integrity. They can still have deep disagreements with the minister and so forth, but the pressures were so overwhelming that even when they had one face in private, when they got in public, they were somebody else. You said, wait, what's going on here? And I would say the same thing in relation to any evil. It could be anti-Jewish ideology that's evil. It could be patriarchy, having a discussion about having a discussion about homophobia, having a discussion about transphobia, anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab, all of these evil ideologies from a Christian point of view. You say, wait, let's sit down and try to work this stuff out. But there has to be an honest process to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's helpful. Yeah. I mean, it's a struggle out here. It's a struggle out here.
It's true.
I mean, because, you know, sometimes I think, you know, there are just, for me, you know, certain limits about, you know, look, I'm not going to make enough progress here, you know, but you are willing to, y'all both are willing to go very close to the fire, you know, and, you know, go as far as one could go to really connect your faith, your belief to a practice on the ground. And that takes a different kind of practice, right? That takes repetition. It's a learned form. I mean, you know, maybe a question that comes to mind for you, Father Pfleger, is, you know, how did you marry the Catholic Church to this practice? Because I mean, this is, I'm actually not a terribly faithful anything, but I was born into the Catholic Church because that was the church of my
Right.
mother, basically. But she was a very angry feminist who felt that the patriarchy in the church was appalling. So we went a couple times, and she just railed about the whole thing as soon as we left. But how do you reach out across, because there's a lot of rigidity, right? A lot of structure, a lot of boundaries. So you have even more boundaries than maybe the faith that Cornel is speaking about, that creates more limitations for you. Is that the case? And how have you managed that?
Well, some would say I haven't managed it well.
Others of
I
us
mean,
say you've
I'm the
done a
only priest.
fantastic job.
I'm the only priest in
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
only
Sister
priest
Tricia,
in the
you got it.
Archdiocese of Chicago that's been suspended twice. Um, I've had the front page of the Sun Times here say by the bishop that Father Pfleger shouldn't be a priest anymore. I've been taken to Rome for heresy because I believe and continue to proclaim and preach that priests should be married and women should be ordained priests. I'm a Catholic because I grew up in that faith and in the seminary. So I continued on in that because that was my faith all my life. That's what I knew. There were many times over the years, Dr. Rose, that I wanted to leave the Catholic Church and made up my mind to leave the Catholic Church. And then I began to look around and said, wow, I have these problems with the Baptists. I have this problem with the Church of God in Christ. I have this problem with the Pentecostals. God knows I have a lot of problems with the evangelicals. And so I started looking around, and even the non-denominationals who have become their own denomination. And I realized that with every man-made denomination I had problems with. So, I said, let me just stay here. And I mean, I've been letters upon letters over the years by priests who asked me to please leave the Catholic Church. And I tell them, you leave. I'm going to continue to be, as Cardinal George called me, a thorn in the side of the church. And I said, oh, what a great biblical compliment.
Exactly. Right.
So,
Right.
so I said, I will continue to, I'm going to continue to speak my truth. And if they put me out, they put me out. But I believe that God has kept me and covered me in all this while I confront the Catholic Church. And I just did a big thing here in Chicago where I confronted the Catholic Church because there was some dinner being held in DC where they were honoring, it wasn't the Catholic Church institution, it was a Catholic group who was honoring Attorney General William Barr in DC. And I was livid, and I came out with it here. I called the Cardinal and it's not a Catholic official group. I said, I don't care, the Catholic name on it. And it's the perception, and it should be condemned across the board. I thank God Archbishop, now Cardinal Wilton Gregory, did condemn it in DC, but it should have been condemned across the nation. The treatment of women should be condemned. So we have women preachers here. I have a women associate pastor here. So I believe we're going to continue to do the things that we believe in and say, and let the chips fall where they fall. And I'm still here, and and now I have an archbishop who has decided that he'll just leave me alone. He said, because I'm too crazy to fight with. So I think we got to be consistent and true to ourselves and our faith. And that's with any denomination. That's with any institution. I think that's with universities. I think that's with, with government, that, I don't believe in hooking my wagon to a person. I believe in hooking my wagon to a policy. And so I'm not going to follow behind that person when that person does something wrong. So I just think you got to be true to yourself and not compromise. And I think that's very lonely. That's a lonely walk, because people not only are not going to join with you on it and co-sign it, but I think people will back away from you. And say, I can't be seen with you. I can't have you here. I can't do this. So, again, it's part of the cost, and it's okay. I think we got to get away from the crazy books of I'm okay, you're okay, how to win friends, influence people. That's not life.
Right. But you also get a lot of love too. You people back away, but I've had the blessing of seeing you and Cornel at your incredibly beautiful church, and people adore you. So, they see what you've created. They've created it with you, and you've created it with them. And it's such an inspiring place, and so, filled with life and aliveness, and it lacks all of the rigidity and staidness that I associate. If I lived in Chicago, I would be at St. Sabina, for sure. There's no question about that.
But I think, what I've tried to teach in my congregation here, and I really, I'm so grateful for the people who are members here, because I said there'll be times when we disagree, and but if we're family and if our love is our basis and our faith is our basis, then we'll work through the disagreements and still love each other and join arms and walk together. And I know there's been countless times, and I think one of the things that people are not afraid to say to me, oh, I totally disagree with what you said. I totally agree with that statement I saw you make yesterday. And that's okay. Right. I mean, I think that's okay, as long as we can say, there's times when I have disagreed with something Farrakhan has said, or I've disagreed with something somebody else has said, but okay, but I'm looking at the character of the person. And I stand with that person, take a bullet for him tomorrow, and we'll go down to the ground with him. But so I think that's the reality of life. I mean, my God, I go back and I think there's times I disagree with me. So I think that's life.
I guess that's the question. We're going to give up on ourselves, right?
Exactly.
Like, I'm sorry, I'm not talking to Tricia Rose anymore. I'm just not available.
Well, part of it is too is your genuine humility, which means we acknowledge fallibility, and it's internal fallibility, it's fallibility in others. But Sister Tricia's point about how the Catholic hierarchy at its worst, because you got some decent brothers in there at the top, but at its worst, that they know that you are so adored by the people, you're loved by the people, you're respected by the people. And even when the Catholic hierarchy is coming at you, they do respect you. They just have they just hate the consequences that flow from your prophetic witness, because it undercuts certain things they stand for, and sometimes it reveals their hypocrisy. Every hierarchy has a hypocrisy. Islamic, Christian, Buddhist, Harvard, Brown University. I mean, every institution that has a hierarchy gonna have some hypocrisy. That's another Christian insight. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It just that sin just cuts everywhere, every which way. But it's that love. Now I'm gonna put this book up because this is one of my proud moments. This is a text with Brother Pfleger called "Keeping Peace," and you see Brother Haki there.
Mm-hmm.
That this came out the 50th anniversary of the Third World Press. And it talks about Brother Pfleger on the ground with the brothers, basketball leagues in the midnight hour as an analog to the gang activity going on. Say something about the relation to those precious brothers and sisters in Southside Chicago. We can talk about Chance the Rapper. He lives he grew up right around the corner.
Right.
Julian Bailey, towering philosopher in his own way, come right out of Sabina, even though he's Baptist. Say something about your connection with the brothers and sisters on the ground in terms of keeping the peace, though, brother.
Well, I think we always talk about the horizontal violence, but we don't talk about the vertical violence. And the vertical violence is what has been done to these brothers out here, the demonization. Let me put it this way. I look at Chicago and I look at the 16 or 17 neighborhoods where there's most violence. And you look at those neighborhoods, you see the same thing: double-digit unemployment, underfunded, underperforming schools, lack of resources, most coming back from incarceration with no opportunities. You see the lack of housing, lack of access to healthcare, healthy food. So you live in communities that look like third world countries, and we wonder, well, why is there all this violence? Well, because you have told, and I hear people say, well, why are they killing each other? Well, when you told people since their birth that they're not worth anything, and they have embraced that lack of worth or lack of self-love and see no opportunity. So you put two lions in a cage and you don't feed them in a period of time, it's survival of the fittest. And it's the same thing with communities. When you cage in community with no resources, no opportunities, no investment, and you wonder why there's this violence. It's survival of the fittest. And so we said, well, we're gonna make these brothers a pivotal part of our ministry. And we reached out to them. We started some years ago with 50 brothers and said, let's us reach out to them. All of them either had ankle bracelets on, just come out of jail, on parole, whatever. And so we took their information and all their data and sent it to University of Chicago Crime Lab and sent it out to another university in the East Coast and said, tell us what these brothers do, give us some information. And they came back and said, well, of the 50, we believe that, 40 to 44 of them will end up either incarcerated or shot or dead in the next 3 to 5 years. So this is the group we want. So we took those 50, and in a period of a year, 46 of the 50 were in full-time jobs. We had to stabilize them. We realized we had to do counseling with them because they had to process all this self-hate and all this trauma they've been through, seeing friends shot and killed. But we put 46 of them in full-time jobs, sustained in their own housing, and we did it for $6,700 per person, as really what it cost us. Now, one of them gets incarcerated, it's $44,000 a year. They get shot, it's over $110,000 a year. So we try to say to the business community, well, if for no other reason, it's a good business decision to care for these brothers. They just didn't care about those brothers at all. So we try to be a voice for them and say, that unless you are providing an opportunity for something different, you can't just say put down the guns and not offer them something to pick up. And if you do not offer them as a city, and this is what I told Ram and I've told Lori Lightfoot this, if you don't provide something for them as a city, then you are co-conspirators of the violence that they're about in the neighborhoods. And to be honest with you, both doctors, I'm really concerned right now because there was all these promises made by state and by county and by city, but now all I keep hearing is, COVID, all the money's gone, we're all broke, state's broke, city's broke, nobody has any money. And what I keep saying publicly is, listen, whatever basement room they went into to print all that money for the stimulus packages, turn on the damn machine and start printing the money. Because remember, Doc, what Dr. King said, he said it didn't cost America nothing to integrate on buses or lunch counters or to people the right to vote, but to economically and give equity to communities and give an equal playing field, it's going to cost America trillions. And that's why I think they wanted to kill him when it got ready for the Poor People's March. It is going to cost money and we don't want to invest, but they don't understand. And now when in Chicago, and I'm sure I see other cities in the country, now when violence is coming down to the Gold Coast and coming down to Michigan Avenue, and I go to these groups and all questions always raised, well, Father Mike, how do we stop the violence coming downtown? I said, when you stop the violence on 79th Street. Yeah. I said, because there's nothing left to steal on 79th Street. So they go, come downtown. If I had a bus, I'd bring them downtown.
Yeah. Woo. Yeah. So, the one thing that you said that really struck me too was the use of COVID, the use of short-term catastrophe to deny the importance and significance of the long-term catastrophe that people are facing. And you've been doing work not only with these formerly incarcerated men, but also, sheer hunger crisis that's facing the community now. You're actually launching a food campaign right now. Is that right? Can you share with people a little bit about what you're doing with that?
Sure. We're feeding right now approximately 2,000 people each week. We used to be between 350 to 400. I have never seen more people come to our doors in need and hungry in my life than I see right now. People are desperate, and when I start seeing this some months ago in the pandemic, because people were laid off, and then you already had a community filled with poverty, and then you have people lose jobs, then people are in a more desperate situation. And I believe at least everybody ought to be able to eat. I said, so guess what? When we can't provide all the other resources right now, we are going to make sure that anybody comes to us gets food. We better as a country, and I'll say this and I'll shut up. I am so afraid going forward the COVID and all the other stuff that, that's happening, and the poverty and the racism in this country, and the police reform are being pushed to the back. We did superficial things, and corporations doing taglines and put a sign up, Black Lives Matter. We take some statues down, we change the face on a rice box or on a syrup bottle, but we are not ready to do the courageous things at the roots we need to do. And that's why in this new administration, as I said the day after they got elected at the press conference, congratulations, Kamala, congratulations, Joe. I congratulate you, but understand on December 21st, I'm going to fight with you. I mean, on January 21st.
We must start in December.
I wish it was December, but we're going to have to push them.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Something that we didn't do as well as we should with our dear brother Barack Obama. Too many went to sleep.
Poverty in Chicago was worse at the end of Barack Obama's term than when he started.
But brother, you're doing the Lord's work in a mighty way. And I just want you and the world to know that it is a blessing and an honor to be your brother.
Well, it's an honor to be yours, son. I have so much love for you, man. And you inspire me consistently. I thank you for, mentoring this crazy white boy from the South Side of Chicago. I thank you for your love and your conviction. And I thank you and Dr. Rose for the opportunity even to be here today and to share my thoughts with you. And thank you for what both you do. We appreciate you, and we need you. Well, we need you more than ever right now. I'm so afraid, Trump goes or gets arrested or gets dragged out of the White House or whatever it takes. I'd love to see all of that. But I'm afraid that we're then going to sit back. Okay, we're okay now.
Yep.
We did that in 2008, and I'm afraid we're going to do that again. And we've got to get out there in the streets. First of all, I don't think we're past having a race war in this country, because I think this man is leading up to it. And when Trump goes, those 74 million people that voted for him are here to stay. Anywhere. And going back to what we said earlier, we're going to have to try to talk with them. But at the other point, we're going to have to also say, understand, it's a different day, and we're not going to accept the boldness that you had under this public voice you had in the White House. He's gone, and we're not going to allow this racist, bigotry, supremacist entitlement. We're not going to allow it to continue, and we're not going to allow poor people and Black and brown people to be demonized in this country. And white people better stand up and do that.
Yeah. Well, from your mouth to God's ear, and also to all these other white folks' ears too. So I couldn't agree more. It's an honor to have you on this show, and we love hearing and just learning what you're doing, because it's so grounded.
Love you, brother.
Yeah,
love
really
you, man.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for the honor. Appreciate you.
Yes. All right. Good luck with the good works.
Yes. Bless you all.
Well, thanks everyone for a great conversation and for joining in with us on the Tightrope. We adore having you with us, and we look forward to having more opportunities to continue to dialogue. Please share with your friends and family and coworkers and the like, the Tightrope on YouTube, as well as if you subscribe to audio podcasts, just check us out wherever you listen to the rest of your podcasts, and hang out with us on the Tightrope. We have plenty more coming your way in the months ahead. We look forward to seeing you soon. And as always, it is a great joy to work with my dear brother, Cornel West. Cornel, thanks so much for being here with me.
It's always a joy, my dear sister Tricia.
Hey there, my Tightrope community. Have you heard the news? We are moving all of our Tightrope content to our Patreon in order to keep our show independent and ad-free, keeping ourselves able to say what we want, when we want, to whom we want. We are asking our incredible audience, that's you, to please extend your support to us by going to www.patreon.com/the Tightrope Pod, and please become a member of our Patreon community. Here in this new location, we will continue to bring you our full-length episodes, exclusive opportunities to interact with us on a regular basis, and also some behind-the-scenes content. So we really, really hope you'll join us on Patreon, and we appreciate all your support. We'll see you there soon. Bye-bye.